so many Australians are suffering. And what did this government do for the first 18 months? It spoke about the voice, a divisive proposal which divided Australia. They completely took their eye off the ball, and all through that time we were saying you've got to address the cost of living. And frankly, I think we did that in spades during the campaign. And while we did that, we were hit with a barrage of lies. I've been around for a while now, Kieran. I have never seen so many lies from any side of politics. The lies that we saw on nuclear costings, on health and education cuts, the lies on Medicare, basically saying that Medicare was under threat, was just absolutely laughable. The Prime Minister even lied about falling off the stage. And so I think a lot of Australians looked at the things that were being said and were saying that is not good enough. I was just about telling the truth, Joel.
But you sound like you're trying to blame everyone else.
No. I'm just calling it as it is.
For what was a terrible campaign. I'm sure Peta himself would concede that.
Murray, on his social media, I was so disgusted. You did a social media video saying that Peter Dutton's plan was to cut Australians' wages. Now, that was an absolute lie. Lie, Murray.
Happy to address that.
What about the
That was a lie, and all you've done...
Happy to address that.
All you've done, and I've seen many lies from you in my time in the Senate, but that was a really big one.
You haven't got parliamentary
and frankly, I don't worry. Bring it on. But what I can say is that Australians, and they were saying this to me on the polling booth, we are sick of the lies. And one thing that we saw from Peter Dutton during this campaign was conviction, courage and truth.
I mean, it seems to be okay for Liberal Party politicians to accuse Labor of wanting to bring in negative gearing when we say we're not going to do that. Apparently that's not a lie. It's okay for Liberal politicians to say that we want to extend taxes on superannuation, and apparently that's not a lie.
Well, you did.
You are unrealised gains on superannuation.
Beyond the policy that we've announced, you spent a lot of the campaign convincing people that we were going to broaden that, but apparently that's not a lie. But if we want to point to Peter Dutton's record of what he actually did as a health minister,
what's the logic behind this?
That's a lie.
We think you lied, so it's all right if we lie.
Well,
you got
him back, didn't you?
The point I'm making.
You can't just... You've been going around saying, oh, the nuclear plan's going to cost $600 billion. It's just a load of crap.
But in relation to that...
come from?
I feel that the lies are dragging down democracy, and I think the lies, even when the lies are called out, like your bloke was called out the other night by Phil Coorey, and then he pumped that lie out the next day and the next day and the next day, and it's debilitating to democracy.
One of the big issues there, once more, offshore intermittent power precincts, so-called renewables. People hate them like they hate them in the Hunter, like they hate them in New England. Urban Australia, please hear us, we hate them. It gives a great vulnerability for people to just come and bomb it with BS. You know, it's going to $600 billion. It's, you know, you're going to have three-headed fish and all this sort of rubbish.
Women voters are increasingly not voting coalition. His comments added to that.
Don't
you had the work from home
ladies and gentlemen,
which
these statements as truth, okay? They're just statements.
What I'm saying is I think the risk was that it would further alienate women voters in addition to the work from home backflip. And this point about the backflips and the catastrophic campaign, I think the real problem for the coalition...
Barnaby, there was a 3% swing against the coalition, and the news poll showed when it broke it down, there was a 6% swing amongst women against the coalition, so do the maths. Just speaking
for your own review...
They're half the population.
I just love how all the men are having a say about how women vote. I just love it. I love it. Kieran, some of the bluest of bluest areas are the most difficult for the Liberal Party now. So I would be careful with just assuming...
Well, what's that about? How's that been allowed to happen?
Obviously, they're all women.
Well, because when you've got a bit more money in your pocket, you maybe not focused on things like cost of living. You've got an ability to look at other issues. Well, and if the election's about cost of living, you tell me how you guys keep losing poor old seats where people are struggling.
I think the really interesting thing will be tonight whether the strategy that Peter Dutton pursued, and I know you encouraged him to pursue, Peter, of ditching the teal seats for the outer suburbs, whether it pays off.
Don't verbal me, Murray.
What is that about?
I have never advocated ditching the teal seats.
You've certainly advocated for going after the outer suburbs.
I've always advocated, coming from a poor, backward part of regional Victoria, that those places cannot and should not be forgotten by the Liberal Party.
Well, the strategy will be very interesting.
Mate, your mouth is writing cheques your brain can't cash.
Peter,
the thing that I would say about the Teals, they are not who they say they are. Peter calls them the Gucci Greens. Most of the Teal's MPs are left-wing activists, but most of them are left-wing activists. And what happens in those Liberal seats is that they get all of the Green supporters. They all dress up in their Teal's T-shirts. They are not.
I guess the question is, why do they look like they might?
That Bowen, now there's a man who is absolutely... And I wanted Chris. Chris, come to New England, come to Hunter, come to Patterson. That guy is toxic in regional areas.
He's a very good man, doing a very good job.
Oh, he's doing a great job for us. Do you want Meryl Swanson down in Patterson? Do you want Chris Bowen to come out to Patterson?
I think Chris Bowen has been to Patterson.
Do you think he's an asset?
I think he's been there recently. Is he an asset elsewhere?
Yeah, and yes, I do think he is, and I do think that Labor's support for renewables is an asset for the country overall.
Where's Bowen an asset?
Barnaby, I know you still want to fight the climate wars, and you'll never stop.
We always won them.
The reality
is,
is, well, you lost the last election, where it was a very big issue.
But
the reality is that renewables is the most popular form of power in Australia.
That is garbage.
It may not be in your household or in some of your neighbours,
it's not in
but across
Patterson,
Australia,
it's
it is
not
the
in
most
Gilmore,
popular form
it's not
of
in New
power.
England. It's only popular in the suburbs of Sydney. And even they say they don't want the wind towers.
There is more solar
they don't
on
want
homes
the
in regional Queensland than there is in
We're talking about the intermittent power
in the inner city Brisbane.
We're talking about the intermittent power
If you want to keep fighting the climate wars forever, go for your life, and it'll be interesting to see whether your nuclear position remains in place.
Well, let's watch.
If you lose this
Let's watch how we go in New England.
So Tony Blair knows
election's not only
more.
about New England, Barnaby.
Well, I mean,
the election's about the entire
We were going to have a nuclear power plant. I want a nuclear power plant. Let's see how unpopular it is.
You can't outspend a Labor government in an election campaign, but that's effectively what Peter Dutton did. There wasn't enough definition about what he stood for.
Oh, absolutely not. It was a shopping bag that he brought to a knife fight. I mean, if you don't like this policy, I've got another one, I've got another one. And in the end, I bet you many voters couldn't remember half the policy, or 90% of the policies he was talking about, or even in whose policies they were, because there's no story within, there was no definition. They were ahead in the polls only 4 months ago, and by a handy margin. And then they stopped fighting. They stopped fighting on all the things about what little few values they fought for. That went out the window. They were scared of their own shadow. Remember, they won. They beat Labor they were winning against Labor by talking about the culture war issues like The Voice, for instance. They beat The Voice. They released their nuclear power plans. They were talking about immigrations. They were talking about China. They were talking about defence, the need to boost defence. But then they stopped. It's just astonishing. They stopped. It was like they were so scared of seeming like a Donald Trump or whatever it was, and flat-footed. I mean, I've seen Murray, and good luck to him. He's been smiling all night, and so he should. Winners are grinners, and winners are losers. But I've seen Murray say time and time again, the central core of the Labor scare campaign was the coalition has got $600 billion nuclear reactors, and they've got secret plans to cut Medicare to pay for them. Every bit of that is a lie. Murray will in his heart know it's a lie, but that's not the issue. The issue here is, how come the Liberals and the Nationals, particularly Liberals, couldn't counter it? It was just astonishing. They actually hid the man who knew about the nuclear plan, their energy spokesman, Ted O'Brien. You saw him only in one debate where he tailed up Chris Bowen, and that was it. You didn't see Andrew Hastie for most of the campaign. You didn't see Jacinta Price. And I don't know if Barnaby will tell us the truth. Why was he put in deep freeze too, apart from coming on my show as a regular? I mean, it's just extraordinary. The best communicators were sidelined, and this was a party that lost its guts. And they lost the election.
The Liberals weren't too impressed with their candidate, some of them, when it came to Bennelong, heard internally. It should be a seat, of course, they'll be looking to win.
Not just Bennelong. I mean, we could talk about this later, but the selection of candidates hasn't been great, and it's been late.
Yeah,
particularly in New South Wales.
The candidates should be locked away a long way ago. You've got to advocate, and they really needed to push their key policies like nuclear versus the renewables shambles and some fiscal responsibility but they ran a mile from those debates.
Chris, you've got to have something to advocate for, and you've got to have key policies to advocate in the first place.
Well,
so
the energy one is historic, and yet they ran away from it.
They may have run away from it, but Labor put it front and centre. They didn't put it front and centre in terms of the viability of it. They put it front and centre of the cost.
Exactly.
And whether that is a scare campaign or not, I think what the Liberal Party, the coalition, need to do is have a look at the result tonight, not stand up tonight and say, look, we've lost the election, but we're going to still push ahead with nuclear. Surely,
no.
You've got to say, we're going to review everything. Not tonight, Chris.
You can't become Labor light. You've got to learn to advocate your policies, call out the lies, and actually win an argument.
You can't be Labor light.
Not promise what Labor promises.
But you've got to look where the electorate is. And if you can't drag them to where you are, you might have to somewhat meet them where they are in many points. I mean,
you have to look at where the electorate is, then you have to look at Labor's vote as well. And
absolutely.
This is my point, is the major parties are losing them in droves.
If Peter Dutton does lose in Dixon, they've got a leadership crisis, because there is no person that you would naturally say that man is a leader or that woman is a leader. They can lead them out. You know, they have a vision. They've got some. Angus Taylor obviously is in front running. And while he did do very well against Jim Chalmers in their first debate, perhaps a tie in the second, he's going to get a lot of blame for the economic policies, which were a dog's breakfast, really. I mean, no clear cut through on what they wanted. Fancy a Liberal Party going to the election promising higher taxes than Labor. I mean, seriously, that is a brand issue there. Plus, it's got presentation issues too. He always looks so uncertain against Jim Chalmers' great certainty, even when he's selling us rubbish. And Labor has gone to this election, don't forget, not with a plan to get Australians richer, the economy richer, bigger, stronger and all that. It's been a handout policy, really. How's it going to pay for it? It had no plan to retire to do anything about 10 years of deficit. So it's got real problems. It's committed to an energy system that will not work in the end. That's going to get more and more critical over the next 3 years. A worsening financial situation without even taking into consideration any potential external shocks. So, the Labor Party's actually won without a plan for government. And I don't think Peter Dutton ever did what I kept saying he should do, pick a fight with Donald Trump to prove that you are your own man. He never did that, and the label stuck, and it also made him more cautious in fighting for his own values. He backed off all those things I talked about last time, all the culture war issues and the battles and the voice and all that he stopped doing for fear of seeming too Trump-like. And you see the result.
We could have gone harder. We absolutely could have gone harder. We could have gone harder also on calling out the Prime Minister and his lies, because apparently all you have to do is lie to the Australian people. And that's an effective enough campaign to maintain government. People
thought he was scary. I think Tanya Plibersek probably did it deliberately, likening him to Voldemort. His looks were unfortunate. That stuck. People, scary guy. Anthony Albanese. Sure, he lied his way to a win. I got that. His policies will be rubbish. I think the Liberal Party will have, the Labor Party is going to have a real big challenge in front of it. How could it possibly be that a government that left Australians poorer, more divided, more uncertain, weaker militarily, promising a decade of deficits to come, how could that possibly have been re-elected? And not only was re-elected, with a swing towards it. I mean, it's astonishing. Well, it did it because Anthony Albanese didn't look threatening, and for all the damage he did, he said, it's not my fault, and I've got a band-aid for it. A handout here, a handout there, another handout there. Even a handout to some of the most privileged people in our society. Students, 20% off your debt. That was a big one at the end. 20% off your student debt. These are privileged people. And I think that's helped him enormously. But like I said, it will leave the Labor Party without a plan to restore the economy that is needed to actually pay for all this. And that is going to be massive. Will Labor, in fact, have to deliver the cuts to the public service that it excoriated when the Liberals proposed them?
If people are thinking they're going back to work two extra days, and you live in Penrith and you drive into Sydney or you live on the Central Coast, The $14 you save on a tank gets eaten up very quickly.
Well, of course, Labor completely mischaracterised what our policy was all about.
You can't keep blaming Labor for your loss. You can't keep...
Murray, could you just
take
not...
some responsibility.
Yeah, Murray, I am taking responsibility. But what I am saying very clearly is that it was a mistake.
And you have a look at when you demonise the character of someone, it is a shame that to beat a human being in the game in Australia, we've now got into this system where we tear them apart, their character apart. Because he is a fundamentally decent human being, and that he was demonised to the point that he was a caricature, I think says a lot about where politics is today compared to where it was 20 years ago, even 15 years ago. And I think that's a real shame.
I think there's a bit of fault to go around.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's just Labor.
It's not the first. Julia Gillard copped a pretty hard time from certain Liberal Party
Tony Abbott
people.
did too, mate. It goes
I'm just
around.
saying it's not a new thing, but it
But
was
I
a
think
very
we should
dignified
reflect
speech.
on that. You guys fought a culture war. The Voice was a culture war, and you lost it resoundingly. I think that's a bar that Labor often throws over there about culture wars. I'd argue we didn't do enough of a culture war in this.
Be my guest. Be my guest. If you want to have more culture wars, be my guest.
Well, things
because you
like...
saw how the Trump thing went down.
No, it's not Trump. It's not Trump. It's something like just a simple statement of rights for women. That should not be controversial. I'm not saying getting into the trans debate, but just reasserting the rights of biological women. I don't think that's controversial.
Does that get votes, though?
It's just not what... It's not what mainstream Australians
Australia's different to America on that.
I think, again, gentlemen, if you would forgive me, but I'm sick of being mansplained about what biological women feel about biological female rights. We do care about it. It crosses a divide. And I have been stopped by women wearing Yes T-shirts at the airport saying, keep going, my mob won't talk about women's rights. So I do think I don't think it's a leading cause and big issue for the campaign, but I don't think you forget to talk about it. We refused to engage on that.
The Liberals fighting issues that I would categorise as culture wars, working from home.
What?
Working from home.
I don't think that's a culture
That's not a culture issue.
It was trying to send a message to people who can't work from home that you're on their side. The anti-public sector rhetoric that's a culture war.
Oh, I don't think that is. I think that's budget prudence. But anyway,
I mean, school curriculum, the backflipping there. Sarah was talking about changing the school curriculum to eliminate some of the woke stuff. Then Peta said, "No, we're not going to do that."
No, that's not correct.
People were the biggest issue in this campaign was always going to be cost of living.
This time he didn't leave it to chance. He had a prepared speech on an auto cue, on a teleprompter. And look, there was a lot of nonsense in the speech about making the country stronger. We know that's not going to happen. We've got economic problems, we've got energy problems.
You know, the animosity we saw during the campaign and the very personal tone, the monstering, really, of Peter Dutton. He became a bit of a caricature at times. I think what was on display tonight from Anthony Albanese really is an acknowledgement that he thinks Peter Dutton is a decent man, and he is a thoroughly decent man.